Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Amrita Batnal. I'm an associate editor here at DevX. And today I'm really excited to speak to both Matt Warner, who's the president of Atlas Network, and Philippa Amanta, the head of research at the Center of Indonesian Policy Studies, on a very exciting topic of breaking down barriers, facilitating trade in Indonesia's food sector. Now, one thing we know is that the food sector is full of challenges, and one of them is a policy challenge, but the other is also a communications challenge, and that is something that I'm really interested in speaking to Philippa and Matt today. So, Philippa, if we could just get right in, we're hearing about your project, we're hearing about your research project, and to me, it sounds like the main crux of it is communicating the barriers that are caused by food policies, but to the main to like the general audience and to the main public. So can you talk a little bit more about what was the policy gap that you noticed while designing the campaign, and what were the challenges in really sort of taking something as academic as that to the general audience?
Thank you so much, Amruta. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are several challenges when we're trying to communicate policy issues, especially relating to food. So first, we wanted to create a campaign that helped people link their daily experiences with buying food, their understanding on issues of poverty, as well as how they are impacted by more high-level trade policies that people may not immediately make the connection with. And then secondly, we also needed to widen people's perspectives and provide a sense of urgency by highlighting just how much we pay in Indonesia for some very basic food ingredients compared to others in different countries. And to point out that the prices that we find in this country are relatively higher, especially given the level of income that the average Indonesian earns. So for example, here in Indonesia, rice is a staple food for many Indonesians, yet its domestic prices is more than twice the international price. Similarly, nutritional items like beef or fruits are also very expensive. Yet the public are rarely aware of this fact because generally people don't really check for international prices. They just take the prices that they are given, especially since food is a basic necessity. And then lastly, we wanted to challenge existing perceptions and assumptions about food imports and the welfare of poor Indonesians in relation to food prices. Food in Indonesia, as well as other countries, can be a very nationalistic topic that carries a lot of emotion in public discourse. So we wanted to let people explore the issue from an evidence-based and logical perspective. So with that, we developed Hak Makmur, which is our public-facing campaigns that let people compare prices of groceries in Indonesia as well as in neighboring countries. The name Hak Makmur is actually short for Hak Makanan Murah, which directly translates to the right to affordable food. So through Hak Makmur, people can see prices of everyday food items like rice, egg, sugar, chicken, and beef in Indonesia, and also compare it with prices in comparable settings in neighboring countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand. So we also show how much money Indonesian households have to spend extra compared to households in neighboring countries as a result of the price differences. We publish this information every single month with analysis on key price trends as well as other factors. And we think this is highly relatable to everyone as it reflects their daily realities, especially people who have to calculate their household budget just to get enough to eat, or people who have to make decisions on what kinds of grocery items that they can afford with their limited budget. So it's really quite eye-opening for us, seeing how much more we have to pay and the dietary decisions that we have to make due to restrictions on food trade. This information entices people to learn more about the issues of food trade policy in Indonesia, which we directly link them to the website. So we then point people to resources, further information on our policy analysis and policy recommendations, as well as a petition so that they can voice their opinion and also show their support. And we think this is an important strategy to communicate this with the public as part of our broader advocacy effort, because it really brings a sense of urgency and public awareness. And importantly, it creates public support as well as a public pressure for policymakers to act on the issue. So as of now, we have about close to 13,000 Indonesians who have signed on our petition to make food more affordable through more open food trade policies. So this really shows that communication works to get public support and to get public pressure for policy issues. So this has been a great support for our advocacy to policymakers.
Right, that's really interesting that you kind of took that information, which is hidden either in reports or just in government documents, and you like bring that to the public. So, what were your other stakeholders who you interacted with in kind of bringing this effort to the larger public? Right, I can imagine it's not just one organization, but an ecosystem that is involved.
Absolutely. We have quite a broad range of audience that we wanted to target with this communication campaign, particularly low and middle income households, as well as broader consumers and university students. And then through our engagement with its diverse categories, we learned perhaps 3 major lessons learned that we think would be important to engage these diverse range of actors, which is about relatability and reach and also consistency. So we're trying as best as we can to be relatable to this audience, which means that we have to talk to them with a language and also a narrative that directly speaks to our audience. For example, when we're talking about the bulk of food items that we display in our communication website, we are specifically choosing those items that Indonesians regularly consume, what makes a proper nutritional diet. So it's a combination of rice, a little bit of protein, other necessary cooking ingredients. So it is highly relatable to our target audience and just public general who can understand those. We also try to provide information that are provided in plain language, avoiding any of those high-level economic or policy jargon, just so that everyone can understand the clear messaging that this is the issue that we're talking about. Food prices is the problem here, and how can food trade policies address these problems? And then secondly, we also wanted to reach a wider range of audience, as I said, like university students. So we also collaborated with people that our target audience are following. For example, when we're trying to reach students and younger consumers, we partnered with social media influencers to create entertaining educational contents. We created several videos with a popular Indonesian YouTuber to share our campaign messages, and it helped us reach hundreds of thousands of views and also increase the number of supporters to our petition. We also created a short movie with another movie production company called Cameo Project, and the short movie is titled Bakul Kosong, which literally translates to an empty bowl, about rice supply chain in Indonesia and the urgency of rice policies. So it was launched online, and we even held screenings in several universities, partnering with associations or university students. So that was really an effective way to widen our reach. And last but not least, we also think that consistency is also crucial. So consistency of content as well as of messaging. We've been developing this campaign since 2017 and publishing the food index every single month since then, producing regularly digital content with the same messaging on how food prices are expensive and the kinds of policy interventions that are necessary. So being very consistent and persistent with the key messaging, I think, is also key to engaging a diverse section of audience.
Right, that's really interesting. And for me, I think the key part also is to take that messaging and to sort of tailor it to different kinds of audience, right? Matt, coming to you next. As a network, how do you see this effort being situated in other countries, within other countries, and the effort that maybe has been going around in other parts of the world? And how do you think networks such as yours can really leverage an initiative like this?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk, and thank you, Philippa, for the opportunity for Atlas Network to partner with your organization. We're very keen to be thinking about how we as outsiders situated in Washington, D.C. can support local organizations who have their own vision for change, have their own project design, aren't looking to us to come in with those kinds of solutions, but welcome not only financial support, but opportunities to connect with other civil society organizations around the world. So it's very important that we facilitate the opportunities for people like Philippa, who are leading on important issues, to be able to share what they're doing more broadly. And so we convene groups both in the region of Asia, but also globally, so that these kinds of solutions are brought to a wider audience, and we can learn more about what the local vision for change looks like. You know, the New York Times editorial board this year said, you know, trade can do more than aid to strengthen development around the world. And so how can we support that, whether we're in New York or Washington, D.C. or wherever? It's getting to know and learning from people like Philippa and supporting their vision for change.
Right. Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you so much, Philippa. At DevX, I can assure you that we'll keep tracking efforts such as yours, and it's something that we'd love to bring to our audience. Thanks again, and thanks for your support today.
Thank you.